This is a Tomahawk cruise missile, and when it's fired, all hell breaks loose for the enemy. Need to blow up a hardened concrete bunker 20 feet underground? What about a command and control center, or maybe protected sites with robust air defenses? Whenever the U.S. military asks these questions, the weapon of choice they turn to is the Tomahawk cruise missile. But while it's been used continuously in combat since it was first fired in anger in the 1991 Gulf War, the missile has become an iconic symbol of American combat power. But with so much rumor and mysticism surrounding the missile, what can it really do? It's the early morning hours. Crew members are standing the mid-watch somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea. Suddenly, the Tactical Action Officer, or TAO, gets a message that changes everything. He wearily calls the captain to wake him up. The captain immediately jumps out of bed and bangs on his executive officer's stateroom on the way down to combat. After waking him up, he orders him to the bridge to take all navigational reports while he goes to the Combat Information Center to approve the mission. As soon as he gets into combat, there is a flurry of activity on a usually boring and mundane watch. The TAO is working with the bridge team to get the ship to the point where the ship must fire the missiles called the launch basket as quickly as possible. The engineering officer of the watch is starting more engines and placing them online to give the ship more speed to get there. The officer of the deck passes the word that River City is in effect, meaning that no off-ship communications can be sent, lest someone email a relative back home about what is going on before it happens. As the captain sits in his chair to be briefed by the TAO, the strike team is busy building a track for the missiles. The ship is only responsible for getting the Tomahawks from the launch basket to the first pre-planned waypoint, or FIPWIP. After that, the missile receives guidance from pre-planned mission libraries sent by satellites that are approved at the National Command Authority level. Because of this, the ship has no idea where the final targets are going to be, just that they need to get to their launch basket quickly and build a firing plan that gets these missiles to the FIPWIP without causing any damage to other nations or neutral shipping. As the ship nears the launch basket, the tension on the ship is palpable. The crew has been on deployment for months without much else going on besides a few exercises. However, such is the nature of Tomahawk strikes in that higher authorities can order them at any time without warning, so the crew must be prepared to execute these missions at all times. And thankfully, they have been practicing because the strike team has created a firing plan that the captain must approve before it's loaded into the database. Now it is time to fire. Up on the bridge, it's been pretty hairy, moving as fast as the ship can go. The bridge team has had to navigate numerous high-density traffic situations with the executive officer by their side to get to the launch basket. But now that they're there, they slow the ship's speed to a snail's pace and brace for what's to come. After the captain has approved the mission and verifies the ship is in the launch basket, he gives the order to the TAO for batteries release. As soon as the TAO rolls his keys, the bridge team is blinded by a flash of light as the first missile leaves a forward launcher. However, the team cannot look away for long since they have to verify that the missile fired and it transitioned to cruise. Once the team makes this report to combat, the next missile fires, and then the next and the next until the total number of missiles called for in the order are away. But what happens from the time the ship launches them until they reach the target? Once the Tomahawk missile is in flight, it will continue until it reaches the FIPWIP. After hitting this waypoint, the classified mission libraries are received by the missile as it establishes communication with a satellite. Because the missions Tomahawks are often called to carry out are classified to the highest levels, U.S. military leaders shield these facts from subordinates to ensure mission integrity. As the missiles go over land, they use several features that enable them to get to their target. The first one of these is known as TERCOM, or Terrain Contour Matching. TERCOM is a revolutionary technology that allows the missile to stay as low to the ground as possible. This is because air defense radars naturally have an upper limit and a lower limit that the radar cannot see incoming threats. The Tomahawk attempts to get under the lower limit of most air defense radars by hugging the ground as close as possible. But to do this, the missile needs TERCOM. What TERCOM does is that the missile is pre-programmed with terrain heights and features along its intended path. The missile itself is an onboard sensor that sends signals to the ground and receives reverberations that enable the missile to know how high it is in the air. The Tomahawk will then adjust its height accordingly to ensure it maintains as low a profile as possible without running into a mountain, building, or anything else. TERCOM also allows the missile to follow prominent terrain features on the way to its target. Highways are one common example, but the other noticeable landmarks like mountains, lakes, and rivers also form key waypoints in its path. But once the missile gets to its target, it has another technology that helps it find the right target. Known as the Digital Scene Matching Area Correlator, or DSMAC, this technology allows the Tomahawk to recognize the exact target it is supposed to hit. By using a picture uploaded from satellite imagery, the missile can take photos of the area that it's supposed to hit. When the photos come back of the intended target match within a certain percentage of error, the missile guides itself to explode on the target. Upon impact, the Tomahawk has several warheads to choose from. Older models like the Block 3 Charlies and Deltas have either a single warhead or packed with dozens of bomblets, as in the case of the Deltas. However, these Block 3 missiles, while capable of a range between 700 to 1,000 nautical miles, pale compared to the Block 4 Echo variants. The Block 4 Echo variants combine all the features of previous models and more. Beyond improvements to its flight system that give it several hundred more miles of range than older versions, the Block 4s can do a variety of things that older models simply cannot. For example, the newer Block 4s have a hardened navigational suite that makes them immune to GPS jamming. Additionally, and perhaps more importantly, the newer missiles combine features that have tactical significance on the battlefield. These features include the ability to change their target to one of up to 15 different targets, even after being launched from the ship or submarine. Having this capability is an advantage because if a target is destroyed or leaders change their minds, the missile can still take out something else. These missiles can also loiter in place until other Tomahawks make it to the target. Because ships design their own flight paths to the FIPWIP, Tomahawks fired by multiple units could arrive over top at different times. Block 4s can be directed to loiter over a target until more Tomahawks arrive, to pummel an area with devastating effects, much more than just what one Tomahawk can deliver. And that's not all the Tomahawk can do. With the advent of the Block 5 variant, with increased power and more defenses against GPS and electronic jamming, the Navy will continue hitting targets ashore for decades to come. But what does a strike look like, and how devastating can it really be? Throughout the past several decades, the U.S. Navy has had close to 24 operational uses of the Tomahawk. Among these include the Gulf War, the NATO intervention in the former Yugoslavia, the 2003 invasion of Iraq, and the 2011 strikes against Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi's forces. During the 1995 Operation Deliberate Force, the U.S. and NATO countries carried out a coordinated bombing campaign against Serb forces who were attacking civilians despite the UN order not to do so. In the opening salvos of the attack, the U.S. Navy launched several salvos of Tomahawks meant to neutralize Serbian air defense radars and missile sites long before Allied planes reached Serbian skies. Largely as a result of these strikes, Serbian air defenses were almost completely neutralized, and NATO forces lost just one plane during the whole operation. During the 2011 campaign against Gaddafi, U.S. ships and a British submarine fired more than 140 Tomahawks against regime targets in the opening days of the campaign. Throughout just a weekend, these strikes had completely wiped out Gaddafi's air defenses and most important military sites. As a result, the rebels, who had been on the back foot for months, were able to seize the strategic initiative that ultimately resulted in their victory. The ability to inflict strategic-level damage with a tactical weapon is perhaps no better seen than in the most recent example of precision strikes in the 2018 Syrian strike. Here, U.S. forces retaliated against Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad for using chemical weapons indiscriminately against his people. Dozens of Tomahawks came crashing down on his primary airfield used to launch aircraft that carried these chemical weapons. In less than 1 hour, U.S. forces wiped out 20% of the Syrian Air Force in a show of force that such behavior was not acceptable to the international community. Though Tomahawk missiles have not been used in combat since 2018, with the advent of the Block 5, they will continue to play a decisive role in military operations for decades to come. Bye for now.